Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Kevin.
I want to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. Glad you guys are all here. I'm glad I'm here. I certainly know I need to be here, and anytime I'm at a meeting of alcoholics, my wants and needs are the same. I want to be here, and I need to be here, and I'm very happy to be here with you guys. As we always do, we will kick off with the set-aside prayer. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps, and please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first of all, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, which incidentally happens to be my favorite page in our book, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. Oh. We're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of tradition, all who would, everybody, Richard, my man from St. Louis, back in the house, getting ahead of me. Everybody stand up like this. Everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to have fun tonight. I hope you have fun tonight. It's entirely optional, but it is highly, highly recommended. I'm really glad I'm here. I'm glad you guys are here. Thanks everyone for coming. Wonderful to see some friends from around the world, and wonderful to see some friends from my home group, primary purpose group in Calgary, Alberta. So tonight, guys, we're gonna finish up the chapter We Agnostics. And I don't think that's gonna take a full hour. So I want to do something a little bit different tonight. I'm going to talk very briefly about a couple things in the chapter We Agnostics, and then I'm going to have one of my sponsees, share a cycle story. And I think it's very apropos of the chapter We Agnostics and what we're talking about here. And I think you'll understand why once he tells the story, and then we'll get back into the rest of the chapter and we'll finish it off. So everybody, get your muter ready, and get ready to unmute, because I'm gonna ask a question. We'll take a show of hands, and we'll see who wants to answer the question. First question: what step? We learned this last week. What step is this chapter about? What step? So raise your hand if you know the answer. What step is this? Okay, Karen, what step? What step is this chapter about? Step 2. Step 2. All right. I didn't know that. I was confused about that for many years. I had no idea the chapter We Agnostics was step 2. That's what it is. That's what this chapter is entirely devoted to. There's only 2 chapters in our book that are specifically devoted to one step, other than step 1. Okay. The chapter We Agnostics is specifically devoted to step 2, and the chapter Working with Others is specifically devoted to step 12. Okay. I didn't know that. I had no idea. Okay, guys, and like, look, one of the things about this study, one of the things tonight, reading through the chapter We Agnostics, is they're going to start talking about some very weird, old, strange, antiquated language, some old historical references that I didn't understand, man. I didn't know, and I had no idea who Professor Langley was and his flying machine, and I just read that stuff, man. And we talked about this last night. An alcoholic, when I read something, if I don't understand it, What's my immediate reaction? I get angry. I get angry when I don't understand things, okay? Why? Because it hurts, really. It hurts. I feel stupid. I feel dumb, and things that make me feel dumb make me angry, okay? To this very day, okay? To this very day, okay? And so I think one of my duties, my obligations, my joys, my pleasures in my life, and I think a calling that I have is to help other people understand and unpack and try to simplify some of these examples and some of these things. We're going to read about these tonight. And I'll try to really connect them to AA and what does this have to do with me just not wanting to drink anymore and not, you know, being in a psych ward after a suicide attempt. What does, you know, Galileo and the earth revolving around the sun have to do with anything, man? Okay, well, it has everything to do with everything, and I'll explain that all tonight. I'll try to. So one of the first things, guys, again, get close to your muter. Okay, raise your hand if you know the answer to this question. We talked about this last week. The chapter, We Agnostics. We Agnostics. What does agnostic mean? We talked about this very specifically last week. Andrew. Oh, actually, you know what, Andrew? Andrew's gonna share a cycle story. So I appreciate Andrew, but I'm gonna ask Charlotte. Charlotte, do you know? Agnostic. What does agnostic mean?
Egg without Gnostic knowledge.
Boom! Give her a round of applause. There it is. Okay, it's from the Greek. Egg meaning without, and gnosis meaning knowledge. Without knowledge. Does that mean we don't have faith? No, it doesn't mean we don't have faith. It means that we don't have knowledge, meaning we don't have a relationship. I didn't have a relationship with God. Okay, the needed power wasn't there. Lack of power was my dilemma. It doesn't say lack of faith is my dilemma, does it? Lack of power, that's my dilemma, okay? And lack of power, guys, lack of power was my dilemma. Lack of power is my dilemma today, and lack of power will always be my dilemma. Please do not think that because I've been sober 15, almost 16 years now, that somehow I've accumulated some new power. I have not. I have not accumulated anything more than you have. What I have, and what all of us can get and achieve, is simply access to the power. Does that make sense, you guys? And what used to be a flimsy reed is now the powerful, loving hand of God. And what used to be a very flimsy, you know, Wi-Fi dial-up connection is now, I got some 5G broadband going on today, baby. You know what I'm saying? That's how it works. That's how it works. And I haven't, anything that I've done, you can do. And what's the most important word in Alcoholics Anonymous, as far as Kevin is concerned? The word do, D-O. That's all that matters, okay? Doesn't matter what I want, doesn't matter what I need. All that matters in AA is what I do. First, last, always. My problem is not that I don't know things. My problem is not that I don't believe things. My problem is that I don't do things in Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? My grand sponsor Clancy used to say all the time, the steps in AA don't care why I take them. If I do them, I will get well. They don't care why I do them. They don't care what I believe or how I feel. I needed to start taking actions that were better than my feelings. You guys with me on that? You understand what I mean? I needed to start doing things whether I wanted to do them or not, okay? Anyway, so step 2, we nailed that one. Well done, Karen. We agnostics without knowledge, without a relationship. It is possible for me to believe in God and yet keep him out of my heart, okay? So that said, that kind of sets the stage for what I wanted to share with you guys tonight to get us kicked off. So you will remember, I think I have it open here. Okay, you remember the cycle of alcoholism? We get this from the doctor's opinion, okay? And how do we qualify ourselves and how do we qualify our sponsees in AA? Well, I come up with 5 stories from my own life that match this cycle. 5 times that I swore off, became restless, irritable, and discontent when I was sober, had an insane thought, unable to distinguish the true from the false, fell victim to a belief. Okay, the mental obsession in sobriety, when I was sober, took that first drink to get that sense of ease and comfort, kicked off the craving, entered the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. Okay. And so tonight I've asked Andrew, who is a new sponsee of mine, although Andrew is 5 years sober. We just started working together recently, and it's been a joy. For me, anyway. I won't speak for him, but it's been a joy for me. And Andrew shared his 5 cycle stories with me, and I think he has one that is very appropriate for this chapter in particular. And when he shares it, I think you guys will understand why. So I think that this is a good way to kind of fill up the whole hour tonight. After this, guys, I promise Andrew's going to share a cycle story. Then we're going to dive right back into the chapter, We Agnostics. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, everyone. I'm Andrew. I'm an alcoholic. Very grateful to be here. And I'm going to share this first story as it pertains to, that I have that accessing the power is my dilemma. So about 12 years ago or so, I was actually in a Catholic seminary studying to become a priest. And I only lasted 2 years. Traditionally, for an ordained minister in Catholicism, it's about 8 years of study and living in the seminary. And I was just starting to having a sense that things were flying off the rails. So for my stages, starting off with emerging remorseful, after I got into this bad habit of several days of drinking alone in my room at the seminary. And every single time I'd fall into a depression after I feel that comfort that comes tying one on, I'd always put myself in a worse position. So I eventually forced myself after one of these occasions out of my room, and I met with my spiritual director, which is a priest that sits on a board when you're in the seminary. And I met up with him to go receive the sacrament of confession. And so I brought up my drinking, that I think I have a problem. I don't know how convinced he was entirely. And I think that's further evidence now that I've been in the rooms that, there's people who don't suffer from this disease who really don't understand. And so I really felt defeated and like my life was going off the rails. And keep in mind, this is, me trying to, by all worldly endeavors, pursue God at all costs. Like I was endeavoring to study and learn a lot about God.
And Andrew, can I interject for a second?
Yes.
Where was the seminary exactly?
This was in Edmonton.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood. I thought because you were in the Vatican at one point as well.
Yeah, at one point my work led me to the Vatican, and that's a whole other story of cycles.
And you couldn't stay sober in the Vatican either. And that to me,
sober there.
that was the funniest thing to me. Is like, here is a guy in the Vatican. Tell the Vatican story. Tell the Vatican story.
Sure.
Because that to me is like he's in like the epicenter of supposed to be like the holy of holies, and there he is, got no power, can't stay sober.
Yeah, and that's another example of just I would go on these sprees. I'd emerge remorseful with a firm resolution never to drink again. And I'm living in Rome. I worked there for 2 years. And it was always like that. I'd always go on a binge and then emerge remorseful, and I'd have a firm resolution I'm not going to drink. On this particular occasion, let me just pull it up so I have my notes. Yeah, I had decided to move to Rome, and that was my resolution. I would get a new lease on life. So I
Talk
moved.
about it geographic. Some of us moved to Edmonton. He moves to Rome. Yeah.
And so I started this satellite office. We had a bunch of amazing clients and work within the Vatican. And so I'm around a lot of faith-based practices. I'm around a lot of what should you know, of fixed me, but I had this spiritual malady I didn't know about. So when I went to, I would always get restless. Once I moved to Rome, this new way of life was so thrilling. I felt like I had to live it up, right? A feeling of restlessness set over me, and this was a matter of days. I felt I had to seize the excitement of the moment, and that was the restlessness that came as a positive at first, but was restlessness nonetheless. And so at once, the insanity of the true from the false totally, I couldn't see true from false. And all the memories of being in Canada evaporated, all the terrible drunk stories, all the delusion, everything. No strong conviction existed within me. And I was seeing a girl at the time. I was out of the seminary by now. So I was dating a girl. She went off to Asia. And on this particular weekend, I said, I'm home free. I'm just going to go out and walk the streets of Rome one nice quiet night, grab a Peroni, a nice 1 liter
No,
beer.
stop for a second. Raise your hand if you know exactly, hey, you know, my partner's out of town. I got the weekend to myself. I can go out and get in a little trouble. Anyone here identify with that kind of thinking? Everyone on this call, if you're not raising your hand, I don't know. Yeah, like that's yeah, exactly. I get it.
Yeah. And so that's all it was. It was a nice stroll through town and a liter of Peroni. That was all it was supposed to be. But all of a sudden the craving was set off and I didn't know what I was dealing with. And in an amount of hours, I was off on a chase. I was down by the Esquilino Termini train station, if you've ever been there, walking the back alleys, finding any shady person I could find to go score some drugs. I was eventually successful. Now I'm drunk and I'm super high. Just kept going. That led me to gentlemen's clubs. That led me.
And so I'm going to pause right there. You can use your imagination about what happened for the rest of the night, and you will be very right. You'll be right. I've heard the rest of the story. I'll spare you all from the details.
Yeah.
But so first of all, round of applause for Andrew for sharing that. Round of applause. Okay. That was excellent, Andrew. Excellent. And the thing that I really wanted to highlight, we talked about it last week, and I talked with Andrew before this meeting. Most of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them. The needed power wasn't there. Okay. Here is a guy, a Catholic man who was in the seminary at one point, living in the Vatican, man, the Vatican. Drunk, unable, no power, none, no power to stay sober. That is a very illustrative story of exactly what we're talking about tonight in the chapter We Agnostics, okay? Excellent work, Andrew. One more round of applause for Andrew. Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. And so, and if you want to hear the rest of the story, by all means, we'll stay after the meeting. Stay after the meeting, and Andrew will fill you in on all the details about his night in Italy. Okay, guys, so let's go to page 47, everyone. And so we read last week, and I just want to remind everyone, in terms of the action that I do with sponsees for step 2. You know, I know some people do more than I do. I understand that. And, you know, if you're here and your sponsor has you do a bunch of written work and all this stuff, your sponsor is correct. Okay. That's the bottom line. With my sponsees, we read through this chapter and there's 2 questions that we answer. Okay. The first one we read last week. It's on page 47. And with that said, Brad, you are online tonight. Would you be kind enough to read for us from We Needed to Ask Ourselves but One Short Question?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Soloton, recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Brad.
Page 47. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. And at the bottom,
Okay.
it says, please be sure to read Appendix 2 on spiritual experience.
Thank you very much, Brad. And so we will read the spiritual experience. I like to read the spiritual experience. It might be at the end of tonight, or it might be at the beginning of next week. I like to do it at the end of this chapter, and I'll show you why when we get there. So that's the first step 2 proposition. That's question number 1 with the sponsee. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, there is a power greater than myself? We're not even asking them to use the word God yet. You see that? We're not even asking them to use the word God. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe there is a power greater than myself? Okay. As I said last week, working with sponsees in my experience, yeah, we're on page 47, everyone. Page 47. Okay. And like make a big note, like highlight that. Do I now believe that question? Do I now believe? Am I even willing to believe? That's a very important question. That's the first step 2 proposition. It's the first step 2 proposal. And as I said, my experience in working with sponsees, like 97% of the time we get to step 2 and we read that, and 97% of the time guys agree. Yeah, I believe in something. I don't know that I have a great relationship with it or that there isn't work to do, but I believe in something. Can anyone recall? Get on your muters again, okay? And get ready to raise your hand if you want to answer this question. Does anybody remember? If I have a sponsee that says, you know, I don't know, I'm not sure if I believe or not, how do I respond to that? What will be my response to them? What question will I ask them after that? Ben, I saw your thumbs up there.
Yeah, I think the answer is, are you ready to try to believe?
Well, so close. I'll give you partial marks for that, Ben, and I'll give you a big virtual pat on the back for speaking up and attempting to answer. Before I give the answer, does anyone else want to try? That's very close, though, Ben. That's very close. Craig.
Is it are you willing to believe? No.
Well, so we've already asked them that question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe there is a power greater than myself? And they're like, I don't know. If they're unsure at that point. Anyone else? We'll try one more.
Charlotte's got her hand up. Charlotte.
You believe that I believe.
Who said that?
Richard.
Richard. That's exactly what I tell them. And I see Anne and I see Charlotte. I'm sure you guys had the right answer too. And Benjamin and Craig, you guys were super close. That's it. That's what I do. I say to them, do you believe that I believe in God? Okay. And most of the time they'll be like, well, yeah, like, look at you. Yeah, you're goofy for God. Yeah, you're, you know, yeah, you're crazy Kevin the AA Nazi. Of course you believe in God. Okay, whatever they say, you know, and it doesn't matter. That fills me with joy if they say that. But if they can believe that, if they can believe that I believe in God, if they can believe in just that, I can get them started. We can start with that. Upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Okay. And I've talked about this a lot. A long time ago, you know, somebody asked me, what do I think God looks like? And, you know, I thought about it a lot. You know, I don't know what it is for you, but for me, what God looks like, the visual depiction for me of God is a beautiful tree blowing in the wind. That's what God looks like to me. And the reason that God looks that way to me is because in that picture, you cannot see the wind, but you can see evidence of the wind in the leaves and in the branches and in that tree. Okay. And that's how it is with God. I can't see God, but I can see evidence. I can see evidence of God. 31 people in front of me right now on this call. Okay. And what that sponsee is seeing is evidence of something that he doesn't have going on in me. Okay. And it's not me. I am not the power. Okay. I'm not the light. I'm just the bulb. Okay. But I'm the bulb and he can see some kind of light coming from me and coming through all of us. Just like Bill Wilson could see in Ebby Thatcher when he showed up on his front doorstep, fresh skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. Okay. We can see this thing happening in one another. And that was enough for Bill Okay, how did I come to believe? What I came to believe in is you. I came to believe in Alcoholics Anonymous early on, okay? And so my sponsee can believe that I believe in something that he can't see, he can't touch, he can't experience for himself, but he knows that there's something going on. We can start from there, okay? So that's good. That's great. So page 47, Brad, back to you. That was great news.
That was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes, but I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Besides seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. Though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were.
Okay, so guys, I want you to understand the audience that Bill Wilson is going to be talking to right now, specifically, the audience that Bill Wilson is writing to right now for the rest of this chapter, and until I indicate that we're kind of out of that part, are people who do not or refuse to believe in God. Okay, he is really, what he's talking to are people who are borderline atheists, people who say no. Their answer is no to that question. Okay, and they're not there with Bill Wilson for Bill Wilson to say, you know, do you see that there's something going on with me? Do you believe that I believe? So he's going to try to make the case for God here, okay? And the way that he's going to do that is by using multiple different examples through history and science and multiple different things, where what the case he's trying to make is, here are many historical examples where we used to believe one thing as a society. We believed one thing. We were given sufficient reason later on to believe something else, okay? Now, in terms of alcoholism, he just told us what the sufficient reason ought to be, that we were beaten into a state of reasonableness. I was beaten into a state of reasonableness. And, you know, the part where it says, you know, if only I believed as that man believes, if only I had what that man has, it occurred to me a while ago, because I've been teaching this study for a long time, that maybe there are people who have thought that about me. You know, maybe if I could just believe the way Kevin believes, you know, yeah, I could stay sober too. Do you think I had this belief when I got to AA? Not at all, brothers and sisters, not at all, okay? I was a little punk rock atheist when I came to AA, okay? I went to treatment centers. I almost started a riot in a treatment center one time. I wanted to start a revolution of all the non-believers in the treatment center to rise up and like fight against all the God believers in the treatment center. I'm quite serious about that. Okay, I studied religious philosophy in university. I wrote scathing essays and articles about my disbelief in the existence of God. I believed that I had a near-death experience and nothing happened. I didn't see a bright light, and so I thought that I had proved there was no God. I came to AA and they said, you got to find God or you're a dead man. And I said, I'd rather be dead. Okay, I'd rather be dead. And as it turns out, as I love in the Hindu tradition, they believe that people who are closest to death are also closest to God. And people who are at the absolute bottom and have been beaten into a state of reasonableness become very open-minded, as I did. Okay, and eventually AA opened that door for me just that wide that a guy like me could squeak through, and I could come to believe. I didn't believe in God. I believed in some of the people that I saw in AA, and I believed in their love for me. I believed in that. I came to believe that, and I believed that I could grow what they had grown if I did what they did. I came to believe that, and I'd listen to speaker tapes all the time, these great heroes of mine. You hear me talk about Clancy all the time, or Chuck C, or Tom Grafton from Winnipeg, old Tommy G, Vince Y. These men, you know, of course they were not God. Of course not. But as a little kid growing up in a treatment center, that's the closest thing I knew. And it could grow from there, okay? Because I was beaten into the state of reasonableness. But I didn't have it when I got here either, okay? If you're here and you're thinking like, I got nothing, I had nothing, okay? And I could start from there, and we will help you grow it from there. All we need to do is plant a seed. You know, there's that story of the farmer who plants a seed, and some of it lands in the rocks, and some of it grows in the in the thorns, and some of it's stolen by birds, but some of the seeds start to grow. Some of the seeds start to grow. Okay. And if you're here and we planted that seed, we're here to help you grow it. Okay. That's what we're here for. And that's what this book is about. This book is to help me grow that seed. You guys with me on that? You understand what I'm saying? That's what the 12 steps do. The 12 steps help me to grow that seed. Okay. So, what we're going to do now, though, in this part of the book is talk to people who do not believe in God. The belligerent one who says, no, I'm not willing to believe. Bill Wilson, we're going to start talking about lots of different historical, scientific examples where we used to believe one thing, we were given new evidence or new reason, and now we came to believe something else. We changed our belief. And that's the case that Bill Wilson is trying to make. So if you're wondering, why is he making all these scientific, historical examples of all these things? What he's trying to do is convince one person all alone in 1939 on the other side of the United States who happened to get a copy of this book by themselves, all alone. He's trying to make the case to the belligerent one about why they might want to open their minds, why they can change their belief. So we're going to start talking about this, and I'll try to fill in some of the historical gaps on this stuff as much as I can. So with that said, guys, Brad, back to you.
The reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us have a look at some of them. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. Everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. And does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? It has been constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence, right there our perverse streak comes to us to the surface, and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments, thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere.
Okay, so we're gonna stop there. So I mean, this was the beginning of my confusion when I would start to read this stuff, and it was also therefore the beginning of my frustration. Okay, like what a prosaic steel girder is a massive like what is he talking about? I had no idea. So let me fill in some of the blanks. Okay, prosaic just means average, run of the mill, typical. Okay, steel girder. What's a steel girder? Okay, well, a steel girder is an I-beam. Okay, does anybody know what an I-beam is? When they build buildings, okay, they stack the frame of the building on these giant I-beams, okay? And so he's saying, hey, just a typical steel I-beam that they're building a building with. Now, if you think about the context, Where is Bill Wilson while he's writing this? 1937 to 1939, Bill Wilson is in Manhattan, New York, writing this book. And he looks out the window. What do you think he's seeing built outside that window all the time? Skyscrapers being built in the New York skyline all the time. So of course he's looking at steel I-beams. That's what comes to mind for him as he's writing this out. You guys with me on that? And he says, these steel I-beams, they tell us are what? What did we all learn in science class? Ooh, electrons, tiny thousands of little bodies spinning around each other, and there's little atoms and little neutrons and little electrons. We all know that, right? We've all, rudimentary science, we've all taken that. Do you believe that? Well, you don't not believe it. We all just take for granted, right? And then we say, but what Bill Wilson is saying is like, hey, we try to go one step further and say that there's a creative intelligence behind all that created those electrons. Then suddenly now we say, oh, no, that could never be. We can believe that this I-beam is billions and billions of little, jelly beans bouncing around, but we can't believe that there's an intelligent force behind it. There are perverse street sets up, okay? And if you want to know what my level of spirituality looked like when I came to AA, it can be summarized in that line. I read wordy books and indulged in windy arguments. Okay, that was me. I read wordy books and indulged in windy arguments. And I would, even after I came to AA, I'd love to go to chapters. I was so smart, when I came to AA. I was so intelligent. I was almost dead. That's how intelligent I was. Okay. And I love to go to the chapters, the New Age book section. And I would read every book I could get my hands on spirituality, all of them, Conversations with God. And anybody here remember the Celestine prophecy? The Celestine. Oh, that was some heavy duty stuff, man. And I would go to Taoist holy houses and Buddhism and all the stuff. I would read every spiritual book I could get my hands on, except one. There was one book that I refused to read, and that's the one that we're studying tonight, okay? And consequently, I did not stay sober, okay? Now, on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with reading spiritual books. Please don't misunderstand me. I still read spiritual books. My beautiful girlfriend and I trade spiritual stuff all the time that we read. It's beautiful, but we do that in addition to a solid grounding in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, guys, not instead of. Okay, I don't get to cherry pick my recovery. I don't get to do it cafeteria style. I lay the foundation with the big book upon this simple cornerstone. Then a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Okay, Brad, back to you.
Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? We who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness which we should have sought for ourselves.
Okay, so I'm going to just summarize this really quickly. This chapter talks a lot about prejudice. Prejudice. Lay aside prejudice. Sweep aside prejudice. Prejudice against what? What am I prejudging? I'm prejudging. What they're asking me to lay aside prejudice against is really organized religion and spiritual terms that used to make me bristle with antagonism. I love that line because that's exactly how I felt. Bristle with agnosticism. No, sorry. Antagonism. Okay. And I did, and it did make me bristle. They're asking me just, okay, we're not saying it's wrong. Okay. Like I said last week, man. Okay. If you hate God, that's fine. You can hate God and stay sober. We have steps to help you with that. Okay. We can help you with that resentment. As long as you believe that there is a God to hate, okay? You believe that there is a God to hate, Perfect. If you're terrified of God, that's okay, as long as you believe that there is a God to be terrified of. We can help you with all of that. What we can't help you with is no, there is nothing. I will not believe. I refuse to believe. We can't work with that in AA. Okay? Anything else? I don't like God. God makes me feel, I think he's a weirdo. I grew up with a God. He was punishing. I hate God. I hate my family made me believe in God. Beautiful. We can help you with all of that. Okay? The only thing that we can't help you with is no, I refuse to believe there is no God. I won't believe ever. That's a tough one to work with for AA. Okay? You guys understand what I'm saying? Thumbs up. Thumbs up if you get what I'm saying. Okay? Perfect. All right. Back to you, Brad.
Instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. In our personal stories, you will find a wide variation in the way each teller approaches and conceives of the power which is greater than himself. Whether we agree with a spiritual approach or conception seems to make little difference. Experience has taught us that these are matters about which, for our purpose, we need not be worried. They are questions for each individual to settle for himself. On one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself. This power.
Okay, so I just want to point out one thing here. Every one of them, every person who has gotten sober, there's one thing that they agree on. Okay, we believe in something. Step 2, and we have gained access to that power. How do we gain access? Steps 3 to 12. Okay, we've come to believe in something, step 2, and we have gained access to steps 3 to 12. Okay, and anyone who will do steps 3 to 12 will gain access to the power. Okay, that is, I love to say the recovery rates in Alcoholics Anonymous are 100%. 100% of the people who come here and do this work will gain access to the power. And Alcoholics Anonymous has a 100% success rate because we are based on God, and God is infallible. God is infallible. If God is fallible, well, he's not God. By definition, God is infallible. Your heavenly Father will not let you down if we do the work to gain access to that power, no matter how small that belief may be. If we can say, yes, I believe in anything, something, yes, I'm afraid of it, yes, I hate it, no, I don't like it, I don't want to do it, it's fine. Will I do it anyway? Yes, I came to believe in something, and now we gain access. Okay? Brad, back to you.
This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. As a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declared that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power, and to do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in the way of living, in their way of living and thinking.
Okay, so I just, guys, I just want to go back. If you're like, this American statesman, let's look at the record. Who is that? What is he talking about? Okay, it's in reference to the former governor of New York. Al Smith is his name. Okay, and again, guys, where is Bill Wilson from? He's from New York, New York City, New York State. Of course, he's making this reference. Celebrated American statesman, former governor of New York, Al Smith says, let's look at the record. That was his, you know, that was the same of, you know, think of that as like Trump's, you know, fake news, tremendous, you know, that was his catchphrase. Let's look at the record. Okay. And so what Bill Wilson is saying here is, let's look at the record. Let's look at all these people who came to believe in something, took a certain attitude toward that power, and then do certain simple things. Okay. It would warm my heart greatly if y'all just circled that little word, D-O, D-O. They came to believe in something, took an attitude towards that something, and to do certain simple things. Do. That's it. That is the most important word in Alcoholics Anonymous. as far as the Kevin Olson fourth dimension book study is concerned. If your sponsor has a more important word, your sponsor is right. Okay. Anyway, back to you, Brad.
In the face of collapse and despair, in the face of the total failure of their human resources, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements.
What are the simple requirements? Steps 3 to 12, baby. That's it. That's it. There's no mystery here. There's no mystery. Joe and Charlie used to talk about the cake recipe. Anybody here ever heard of the cake recipe? Okay. If I take the cake recipe, if you tell me to bake a cake, you know, mix 3 eggs and this batter and this flour and that sugar at 400 degrees and cook it for 2 hours. If I do what you did, I will get the same cake that you got. Sounds to reason, doesn't it? Well, here's the problem. What do? I say, nah, I don't know. 3 eggs, that sounds like a lot. I'm going to add 2 eggs. I don't know. 2 hours at 400 degrees. I know. I'll go 45 minutes at 800 degrees and it'll be done my way. Okay. And what do you get? Well, it ain't going to be what you got. Okay. Simple requirements. We fulfill a certain simple requirements. I will get what you got. Okay. And you will get what I have if you do what I do and similar. Okay. That's known as the Joe and Charlie cake recipe. Okay. Back to you, Brad.
Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them. When many hundreds of people were able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. This world of ours has made more.
Sorry, I just want to point out here, guys. You know that for me, there's a lot of benchmark lines in the book, and that's one of them. Okay, is the consciousness of the presence of God today, is that the most important fact of my life? Okay, that's a good question. Is the consciousness of the presence of God, is that the most important fact of my life, or am I just calling God in when I need him? Okay, is God the central fact of my life, or is something else the most important fact of my life? The consciousness of the presence of God. Beautiful. Back to you, Brad.
This world of ours has made more material progress in the last century than in all the millenniums which went before. Almost everyone knows the reason. Students of ancient history tell us that the intellect of men in those days was equal to the best today. Yet in ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research, and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought a round earth preposterous. Others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresies.
All right, so I'm just going to explain this quickly. Before Christopher Columbus, what did everybody believe? World was flat. What did Christopher Columbus prove, despite some wackadoos on the internet these days? Okay, he proved that the world is round. Okay, we all believed one thing. We were given new information, and we came to believe something new. Okay, Galileo. What did everybody believe before Galileo? That the sun and all the planets were revolved around Earth. And what did Galileo prove? His astronomical heresies, making air quotes. What did he prove? No, man. We all revolve around the sun, okay? God doesn't revolve around me. I revolve around God, okay? That's what Galileo proved. We all believed one thing. We were given new information, and we came to believe something new. Again, Bill Wilson is trying to make the case to the belligerent one, the one who says he will not believe. Bill Wilson is trying to convince people that it is possible to change our beliefs, okay? Back to you, Brad.
We asked ourselves this: are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancients about the realm of the material? Even in the present century, American newspapers were afraid to print an account of the Wright brothers' first successful flight at Kitty Hawk. Had not all efforts at flight failed before? Did not Professor Langley's flying machine go to the bottom of the Potomac River? Was it not true that the best mathematical minds had proved man could never fly? Had not people said God had reserved this privilege to the birds? Only 30 years later, the conquest of the air was almost an old story, and airplane travel was in full swing.
All right, so Professor Langley was a guy basically funded by the US government, by the US military, had the entire full weight of the United States Engineering Corps behind him in order to build a flying machine, okay? And he did. The full intellect and knowledge and resources of the United States government, okay? And what happened? Well, you read the Potomac River. Where's the Potomac River? It's a river close to Washington, D.C. Okay, so his flying machine, you can go online, you can see his flying machine, what it looked like. Okay, there's pictures of it there's drawings of it online that landed at the bottom of the Potomac River. Okay, and at that point, it's like, hey, if the U.S. military can't get this done, that must prove that man will never fly. Okay, and then two bicycle repair guys in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, with nothing more than just a simple belief and some faith and some ingenuity and some intuition, created the world's first flight. Okay, here's an interesting fun fact, not related to AA at all, but the Wright brothers' first flight, the first flight that they took was less than the wingspan of a Boeing 747. That's I love that. I love that fact. Okay. And look now, look what has grown from that simple beginning of faith that the Wright brothers had. Okay. Back to you, Brad.
But in most fields, our generation has witnessed complete liberation of our thinking. Show any longshoreman a Sunday supplement describing a proposal to explore the moon by means of a rocket, and he will say, I bet they do it. Maybe not so long either. Is not our age characterized by the ease with which we discard old ideas for new, by the complete readiness with which we throw away the theory or gadget which does not work for something new which does?
All right, I just want to explain what the heck is a Sunday supplement. Now, when they talk about a Sunday supplement, well, we don't see a lot of those anymore. Sunday supplements are an addition to a major newspaper. So let's say you have the New York Times. You have the New York Times every day of the week. On Sundays, they would have kind of a special part of the newspaper, and it's addition. It's a supplement to the newspaper. And it was always kind of, slice of life, kind of fun little stories around, the United States and kind of different kind of fun things that they would talk about. And so it's talking about a longshoreman. Let's say you show a longshoreman. What's a longshoreman? Well, where I'm from, in the prairies of Canada, we don't have a lot of longshoremen. They're dock workers. There's guys who work on the docks, which of course in New York City, on the eastern seaboard of the United States, would be a very typical thing. Okay, so just imagine, a regular kind of laborer. You show them a part about man being on traveling to the moon, and here we are. How many years later? We have, I mean, that's old news now, old news. Okay. But that's what they're talking about there. So listen, guys, here's what we're going to do for anyone who's wondering, hey, are we going to land this plane at 8 o'clock or 7 p.m., whatever time you're on? We're not going to finish the chapter. What we're going to do is go just to the second step 2 proposal, which is just on the next page. Then this chapter ends with a story. It's a story of one of the early members of AA, Fitz Mayo. And we're going to save that story for next week because it ties in very, very nicely to what we call the spiritual appendix in the back, which talks about the educational variety of spiritual awakening. So we'll do that together next week. For now, we're going to keep reading, but we might go a few minutes over, but we're gonna wrap up here very quickly in case anyone was curious.
We
Back
had
to
to
you,
ask
Brad.
ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and desperation and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was.
Okay, so these are known, these are kind of famous in AA. You'll hear people refer to the bedevilments, okay, on page 52. Make a note of it and kind of memorize. Where are the bedevilments? They're on page 52. You'll hear people in AA talk about them a lot. Most people will say this is the exact description of alcoholism. This is what alcoholism looks like, okay? And I don't mean this is what a drinking problem looks like, because believe me, I can fall prey to all of those things. Inability to control my emotions, prey to misery and depression, unable to make a living, destroying all my relationships. And guys, the sad fact is, as an alcoholic, I do not need to take a drink in order to do all of that. Okay? You guys understand what I'm saying? Alcoholism is a disease that begins when I stop drinking. It continues on when I'm drinking and when I am sober. Alcoholism is a disease that can wreak havoc in my life. And we just read what those bedevilments look like on page 52. So make a note of them, okay? And some people love to take the bedevilments and hold them up against the promises in step 9 and say that we've achieved freedom from those bedevilments. So we'll talk more about that. Back to you, Brad.
When we saw others solve their problem by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. The Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problems. When others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who insisted the Wrights would never fly. Logic is great stuff. We liked it. We still like it. It is not by chance we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw conclusions. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence, we are at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it more sane and logical to believe than not to believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said, we don't know.
Okay, so guys, right now, this is the second step 2 proposal right here. Okay, and we're going to end here tonight. We're going to end on this. So first question, okay, remember, first question, do I now believe, am I even willing to believe there's a power greater than myself? The second question is right here, okay, Brad?
When we become alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What is our choice to be?
Okay, so that's a really big question that we just asked there, okay? And you know, as a self-proclaimed intellectual, and by the way, that's only self-proclaimed. There is no one else proclaiming that I'm an intellectual, just self-proclaimed. I could read a question like that as a guy who loves wordy books and windy arguments. I could read something like that and get very, very tangled up in a question like that. Okay, I'm the kind of guy, I used to be the kind of guy who would eat a big handful of magic mushrooms and sit around and trip out like, man, he's got everything or else he is nothing, man. Okay, let's do some psychedelics and talk about, oh, God is everything, man. Wow. Okay, so here's the way I'm getting some laughs. All my hippie dudes are laughing right now because I'm right there with you, man. I could be I could be a hippie one day. I could go be a punk rocker the next day. I could be anything you needed, man. I'm a chameleon. Okay, whatever. As long as you're buying the drinks, I'll be whatever you want. Okay. Anyway, back to the task at hand. Here's the deal, guys. The way I reconcile that question for myself, the way that I reconcile that question for my sponsees, the power that I believe in question number 1, you told me that you believe in something, right? Right. Great. Okay. Here's the second question. In terms of God is either nothing or he is everything. Is or he isn't. The power that you believe in, do you believe that that power is more powerful than your alcoholism? Or do you believe that alcoholism is more powerful than the power that you believe in? And at that point, I have never had anyone answer the former. All unanimously, guys will say, no, 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 I believe that the power is more powerful than my alcoholism. At which point I say, congratulations, you are done step 2. In order for step 2 to be effective in my life, I need to, number 1, believe there is a power. And number 2, that power has to be more powerful than my problem. Okay? I don't tell God today how big my problems are. I tell my problems how big my God is. Okay? All of my problems are in the 3rd dimension. And all of the answers are in the 4th dimension. Okay? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Okay? Lack of power is the problem. Gaining access to the power is the solution. Okay? And God is more powerful than my problems. I must believe that the power in step 2 that I believe in is bigger than my problems. And that's usually pretty easy for guys to get their arms around, but I think it's important to point out. And when we talk about this question, God is everything or else he is nothing, I need to simplify things or I will get intellectually tangled up reading wordy books and indulging in windy arguments, and I will be in a lot of trouble. Sitting, getting drunk, smoking weed, talking about whether God is everything or else he is nothing. Okay? I need to keep it simple that God is bigger than my alcoholic problem. Great. Now we move on. Okay? So that's it for tonight, guys. I love you all. Thank you, everyone, for joining.